This is not an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, or a fragment of an underdone potato. This is part 2 of the We Bleed Orange and Black Holiday Special. Tonight, you will be visited by 3 spirits.
Three leaning lines. 2 men shivered beneath the canopy of a snow-shrouded blanket, petitioning a tiny candle for a meager donation of warmth. The light caught in their scruffy beards, leaving their faces smudged with dirt and shadow. They might have been mistaken for humble coal miners, but these fellows avoided such prolonged and lowly labor. They weren't jack-rollers, wallies, or bums, however. They were hobos, knights of the road, brothers of the wander path. The older man, Kinchin Jack, stuck his gnarled hand into the freezing wind to touch the railroad track. His eyes fluttered shut, tracing loops beneath his lids like elliptical train gears. His breath quickened, huffing steady smokestack plumes. Kinchin claimed to possess the power to read the rails, an ancient art allegedly learned in the Great Depression from the king of the hobos, Tex TK himself. His traveling companion, Tar Heel Slim, wasn't much convinced about such things, but he was sorely in need of a Christmas miracle. Kinchin had promised him something miraculous, the location of the legendary Motherlode. The old man pinched out the candle. "It's coming. Diesel, turbocharged, a real cannonball. Get ready." The earth rumbled. Tremors of train song ran through the iron rails and shook their aching bones. A wave of electric light splashed across the bare, ice-covered trees. Slim stowed the blanket and grit his remaining teeth. Hopping any train was a risky proposition, but when they were balling the jack like this, it was doubly so. Panhandlers on the stem occasionally played cripple to arouse the sympathy of an easy mark, but there was no shortage of limpies and wingies. Hobos named Lefty, Mitts, and Sticks, who'd lost a piece of themselves dancing with the train. The train roared around the curving track, spewing black ribbons of diesel fumes into the snow-slashed sky. Slim shifted his weight, weary muscles tensed to the brink of cramping, looking for that split-second difference between riding for free and bloody mutilation. The train horn blared its final warning. Slim searched for a one-eyed bandit, a boxcar with one open door. There, a flash of black on silver, he threw himself forward. Kinchin hooked an arm around Slim's neck, narrowly saving him from a snag. Slim gulped as the loose metal strap streaked by. "Almost scraped your mug clean off." They seized a stirrup and boarded the boxcar together. Kinchin gave Slim a slap on the back and cackled, "Now that's how you flip a rattler." But they weren't safe yet. The cargo had to be inspected to make sure they weren't flattened by any loose freight. The plug door tracks had to be jammed to stop it from sealing them both inside, to be asphyxiated or slowly frozen. Even a sudden stop could smash their skulls against the boxcar wall. Life on the road had many dead ends. Surprisingly, Kinchin pulled out his chalk instead. He scribbled his moniker, adding his nom de road to the boxcar art. Slim usually waited until all had been secured, but he followed suit, chalking his name and usual details. Kinchin spit on a rag and scrubbed away the date, route, and direction of travel. "The way to the Motherlode is our little secret." He drank from his flask of Sterno and then offered it to Slim. Slim passed. He hadn't had a drop since December 1st, and he wouldn't have another, even if the Motherlode was everything they said it was. The Motherlode was the subject of an old hobo ballad, a mythical place of bounty, like the Indian Valley Line or the Big Rock Candy Mountain. The lyrics waxed poetical about burbling bourbon brooks and golden pools of champagne tickling hobos' toes. But there were rumors of an actual place, a stockyard outside a brewery. If such a place existed, the booze was probably expired, or filling a drainage ditch with runoff. Nevertheless, the song was a favorite among the jungles. Some soapboxer was always yammering on about solving the mystery. As for Slim, he had no interest in alcohol. He forced his trembling hands into fists. Yes, he may have wasted his life chasing insobriety, but he had undertaken this quest, with all its fearsome perils, for the sake of his daughter. The state had recently passed a generous bottle return law. Therefore, Kinchin's supposed motherlode could be nothing more than a mound of empty cans and bottles behind some brewery, and still prove to be quite a fortune indeed. First thing Slim planned to get with that money was a hot shower and a smooth shave, followed by a suit of fine, fresh clothes. There would be no more picking shirts off clotheslines or boiling the lice off discards. He'd purchase himself a proper set of glad rags. He imagined stepping off a bus, sober as a judge, with an armful of Christmas presents for his daughter. Slim had been absent for the last few holiday seasons, and, if he was honest, he'd slept through most of the Christmas Eves and mornings prior. It was a brutal time of year. Rugrats tugging at your sleeves, company barging in unannounced, the pressure to hold down a job, as well as put gifts under the tree. Slim had met his daughter's holiday hopes with year after year of disappointment, bleeding her childhood of wonder through 1,000 callous cuts. In the end, the siren call of the road had lured him from his home with the offer of freedom. Slim loved life on the road, despite all its dirt and danger, but it was mighty cold in the winter, and colder still in Christmas, without the glow of the fireplace on your daughter's apple cheeks, or the twinkle of hope in her eyes. Slim would save Christmas for her this year, even if he had to climb down the chimney to do it. Kinchin pulled him to the door of the boxcar. "Come on, let's deck this rattler!" Slim braced himself and followed, eyes blurring from the icy howl that snatched his breath away. This was the deadliest part of the journey. He looked down at the shrieking, sparking wheels below. How would his daughter feel if she found out he'd fallen and greased the tracks? The truth cut through him deeper and colder than the wind. She'd be relieved. He would come home sober, or not at all. Slim clung to the grab irons and followed Kinchin up the side of the boxcar to the catwalk. "Look!" Slim cringed, assured that some traffic light, platform, or tunnel wall had come to smear him against the train. It was a water tank, and there, engraved upon it, was the moniker of Tex T.K., King of the Hobos, A number 1 west of the Mississippi. Beneath it was a cryptic symbol, a top hat triangle, a rare glyph from the secret code of the hobos, the one which meant wealth. The air filled with squealing steel. Slim and Kinchin gripped the catwalk as the train changed tracks. Kinchin whooped, "We've reached the end of the line, my boy!" More specifically, the train had switched to a spur line. Slim grinned. Spur lines led to large railroad customers like mines, mills, and plants. Surely, they also led to breweries. The walls of dark barren branches shifted into a forest of smoldering concrete chimneys. Thick snow hissed through the crackling power lines and drifted across rows of rust-blighted warehouses. "Here!" Kinchin scurried down between the cars and jumped off. Slim hopped off and met him beside a sagging tar paper shack. The old man touched the warped wood planks. There was another glyph. Slim knew most of the symbols that hobos left behind to signal fresh water, religious folks, or dangers like vicious dogs, but he'd only ever heard of this one. 2 parallel lines. The sky is the limit. Kinchin waved him through a hole in the fence, but there was no need. Slim followed the sticky sweet smell oozing on the bitter wind. There was no brewery in sight, nor pipes spewing rivers of alcohol. There was only a lone steel dumpster. Kinchin rubbed his filthy hands together, cackling and tugging his beard in ecstasy. "What did I tell you? Merry Christmas!" He lifted the lid of the dumpster. Slim shielded his eyes as the mountain of glass glinted in the gray glare of the sinking winter sun. He approached in a daze, sweeping his hands across the clinking treasures. There was beer, wine, liquor, practically no 2 bottles alike. They were intact, sealed, and full of precious alcohol. Slim's hands trembled harder. If If he found some top-shelf hooch, he could sell it on the stem for 10 times the amount of a lousy return fee. He practically climbed over Kinchin to get inside the dumpster. The clinking glass parted to accept him, and he waited, digging deeper. The trove of bottles shimmered like sunlight through seawater, shifting from scintillating white wine to blue shades of curacao, before darkening to depths of schnapps, cabernet, whiskey, and port. He lifted a bottle of Macallan's single malt, his favorite. The bottle of scotch glistened in his palm like honey. If this wasn't cause for celebration, he didn't know what was. After all, it was Christmas. What miser would deprive a freezing man of a little canned heat? Slim took a sip, just a taste, to brace him for the task at hand. It moved through him like smoke, melting away the pain and worry of his journey. He chased it with another, so rich and smooth that he nearly killed half the bottle as an afterthought. He nestled deeper into the rolling dune. The mother lode was surprisingly deep. Slim was up to his neck, and he hadn't yet reached the bottom. He reached out for the rust-streaked wall. "Jack!" He rapped against the metal to get Kinchin's attention. A drunken cackle seemed to come from far away. Slim shouted again, frustrated by the chatter of clattering glass. "Jack, can you pull me out?" Kinchin Jack peered over the edge of the dumpster. Slim's bleary eyes must have been playing tricks on him, because the man looked as though he were perched at the top of a boxcar. "You should have read the signs, my boy." Slim hollered back with a question, but it was lost in all the clink and clatter. He threaded an arm between the gliding walls of glass to retrieve his matches. In the brief pop of flame, he caught a better glimpse of the wall. Those were not streaks of rust. Someone had used blood to mark the wall with the direst of warnings. 3 leaning lines. Hit the road. Nothing to be gained here. Danger. He released the scotch and twisted his shoulders, lunging for the opening. Bottles buckled beneath him, biting through his pants and jacket. Escape was still beyond his reach. Slim shifted and stretched his lanky frame. Shards of glass chewed into his chest. Splinters of it punctured his hamstrings. He sank back, exhausted, and brought a quivering hand to his neck. It was untouched, as were his wrists. His shredded clothes dampened, saturated, and spilled over with slippery blood. Slim chuckled, woozy from scotch and blood loss. A slash across the arteries would be too quick, causing his heart to stop pumping. The mother lode would bleed him slow, reclaiming every drop of alcohol with which he'd poisoned his veins. Slim shuddered, pale and cold, and finally sober, tears of blood and liquor dribbling down his face. He thought of his daughter, and understood how she'd felt as her hope died slowly from 1,000 cuts on Christmas. I don't know if you've ever had a story come to you in a dream. This is not quite that. I was awoken by shouting, and I looked outside, and there was a dumpster out front, and there were all these hobos down there. They were just celebrating. They're like, woohoo! And I was like, okay, what about a story about a magic dumpster? I was like, all right, I gotta learn about hobos? Oh no, I gotta learn about trains. Oh no, I'm learning about bottle return laws.
Oh, you love learning about trains and hobos.
A walk in the snowy woods. He walked the path he'd walked 1,000 times, the path tramped down by his father's father. The forest land they had purchased 2 generations before stretched off for acres in all directions, private and isolated, serene and all his. Tall pines, white for winter and glowing with the ethereal light of the full moon, rolled by on either side as he strolled, his misty breath whispering away behind. These nightly walks in the snowy woods were his reprieve from a busy world. No one to interact with, no one to argue with. Out here, a person could walk for hours and never hear or see another living soul. He'd tramped a mile or more when suddenly he stopped cold. There in his path was a snowman, clean and new, and staring out at him with coal-black eyes. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be surprising, but this was private property, his private property. These woods were his sanctuary, away from the land of the living, with all its blaring frustrations, its worries, and myriad intellectual incursions. No one lived for miles around, and the thought of the world finding him in here was too much to bear. He looked for people, but saw none. He listened for footsteps plowing trenches away, but heard nothing. The pure tranquility of the swishing, powdery snowfall remained unbroken, the only unwelcome sound the pulse now rising behind his ears. Odd, too, the wide and rolling strips usually surrounding a new snowman were nowhere to be found, and no footprints, which should be clearly visible in the ankle-deep cover, led to or away from the area. Tranquility shattered, he ran around in all directions, seeking evidence of the perpetrator, but found only clean, unbroken snow. He couldn't think where the snowman had come from, but it was there. He could touch it, could feel the cold skin soaking through his glove, could snap off the arms and throw the carrot nose away into the distance, his growl disturbing the quiet. His beautiful secret world was ruined, the illusion of privacy destroyed. He could never take a reflective walk along the aged path again without wondering who might be following, who might be watching, who was just behind the trees, ready to spoil the air of untouched nature. And now, in the corner of his eye, another snowman appeared on his left between the dark trunks of the leaning pines, and another on his right. He spun, and wherever he spun, another snowman encroached upon the path, tightening the circle, snuffing out the sight of his once beloved snowy woods. Surrounded, he sunk to the ground to weep. That's what I got in an hour.
If you ever spent 2 hours on a story, you'd be unstoppable. I can't believe how quickly you dash these things off.
Yeah, man, that was very impressive for an hour.
Oh, thanks. I was like, ooh, I'd like to write a story about a walk in the snowy woods, but then what happens? And I was like, what would you encounter? What if you encountered a snowman? Okay, then what happens? It's kind of about the fact that there's no such thing as privacy. At least that's how I feel right now.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks directly to Ryan's deepest fear, which is other people and the horror of even snowmen around. A long winter's nap. 'Twas late Christmas Eve, and Santa was weary, still working hard, though his vision was bleary. He'd been up all week and restlessly pacing, avoiding all sleep and the nightmares they're racing. At least the sweet children were safe in their beds, though some tossed and turned, sweat beating their heads. St. Nick noticed one lad, racked with distress, when an arm popped up, right out of his mattress. It pulled him straight down. It was all so abrupt. Then a geyser of blood began to erupt. Some of it got in his mouth when he screamed. 'Twas the very same horror which Santa had dreamed. A cackling demon clawed up through the gore, a monster which Santa had not seen before. He wore a fedora with a red and green sweater, and he clapped,
Santa, Santa, you did get my letter.
St. Nick hit the rooftop with Donner and Dasher and retreated post-haste from the demonic slasher. His sack full of toys suddenly shifted and swayed, and one toy among them in particular played. The crank of a jack-in-the-box started to chime, and a chorus of dead girls sang a cursed nursery rhyme. Santa chucked that shit faster than hot reindeer poo. Rudolph looked back, with his nose burning bright. His whole head, in fact, seemed about to ignite. He turned into Freddy and leapt in the sleigh.
Chill out, Nicky. You can't run away.
Begone, foul demon. I must fulfill my task.
Before that can happen, I have a favor to ask. My name's Freddy Krueger. I'm your #1 fan. What if we work together? I have just the plan. See, I started in Springfield, just a slob with a mop, picking up after students and cleaning non-stop. After school I sold ice cream, just making ends meet. But the punks who all bought it left their trash in the street. Now I still work with children, like that dope who just died. But I'm done with this small town. I'm going worldwide. Let's call it a collab. I'll claim your fame. You've already got claws right there in your name.
Santa's eyes narrowed, and his seething pipe smoked. When he picked Krueger up, it was clear he was yoked. I'll smite thee now, scoundrel, straight back to the pit. You'll never be Santa, 'cause I'll never quit.
Don't kid yourself, Nick. You watch little kids sleep. think you're a saint, but you're kind of a creep. I'm the one with the brains, so give me your body. You can suck candy canes while I punish the naughty. I'll teach all the rest of the kids about fear. They'll be good little boys and girls after this year.
St. Nick stroked his beard. I recollect, Frederick. You were a sad little boy, quite scrawny and sick. It gives me great pain to see you twisted like this. Not only insane, but pissed at Christmas, Freddy snarled.
Shut up, bitch. You don't know what it's like to have 100 dads and still not get a bike. You were safe at the North Pole until you caught some Z's. Now I've got your sugar plums, and I'm gonna squeeze.
St. Nick lay a finger on the side of his nose. 'Twas all a big trick to get me while I doze. You draw power from fear, from our personal hells. So you'll have no luck here. I've got a pair of brass bells. I'm a true Christmas classic, a legend, a king. I fought Martians, the Grither, and even the Thing. I'm out of your league, you overcooked stooge. I doubt you could even scare old Mr. Scrooge. Santa slapped him. Wake up! Smell the coffee, you goober! Tossed him from the sleigh like a crusty Hans Gruber. St. Nick blinked awake, stood with a yawn. He was still in his workshop. Work was still going on. The elves were all busy, making the hottest new toy. 'Twas a big, cheerful doll with the face of a boy. Santa picked up the gift he'd give the lucky that day, and it said,
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Wore a fedora.
Like a Hans Gruber? Come on, that was great.
You think Santa would team up with them? That tracks with some of Santa's other team-ups.
I mean, Santa rolls with Krampus and Torbalon and Tauntaun Macoute.
Yeah, as long as he's not going to molest the kids, he's probably...
Perhaps next year I will include him in Santa's entourage.
You there. Boy, what episode is this?
This episode? Why, it's part 2 of the We Bleed Orange and Black Holiday Special.
Subscribe on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at webobpodcast. And God bless us at webobpod@gmail.com.